BDS. Is there anything we can do about BDS?
Oh, well, BDS is a shorthand for the extreme anti-Israel animus on campus and elsewhere. And the point about BDS is that in many ways, in its own terms, it's failed because, as I understand it, trade between Israel and Europe is, greater than ever before. And people in the West, they cannot do without Israeli expertise, skill, genius in a whole variety of areas. They can't do without it. So on that basis, it's failed. Trade, exchange of products. On a more local basis, certainly all I can talk about is Britain. There are definitely examples of people at a local level in university, the Edinburgh Festival, barring Israelis from participation. And sometimes this gets noticed, sometimes it doesn't. And there are, regularly dreadful scenes on campuses, which is all part of the same thing. What can be done about it? Well, the elephant in the room, I have to say here, is Israel. You can't be more Catholic than the Pope. People in the diaspora can't defend Israel if Israel won't defend itself on those terms. And Israel does not make the case properly, in my view. It does not understand that what it's up against is not a question of Hasbara, PR. It's not a question of doing social media better. This is all pathetic and ridiculous. What it's been up against for the last several decades is what's called PSYOPs, psychological operations, a psychological war. It's been the target of a psychological war waged with great shrewdness and great genius by the Arab side for 4 or 5 decades, backed by a huge amount of money with the intention of turning the entire narrative, which is done with enormous success. And Israel has just not been there and has not countered it. Now, Israel says we can't counter it because who cares about Europe? Who cares about Europe? We're trading with Europe, so who cares what they think? We have America, especially now. We have America, so who cares about Europe? What you think they say, what you think we're going to change the views of Europe, what the graveyard of our people, what you think you're going to change the views of people in Britain, after what they did in Palestine under the Mandate, what you think we're never going to have any kind of impact on these anti-Semites? They're anti-Semites. They were, they are, they will be. What do you want of us? We're busy fighting Iran and Hamas and the Hezbollah. So that's where we are. So they have not taken the fight to the enemy. And I say to them from time to time, you could have an enormous effect if at a very high level, at a high volume, you started saying some unpalatable truths. For example, the so-called Friends of Israel in the British and European governments are actively aiding a program which is devoted to racist ethnic cleansing. Not one Jew in Palestine. What do you think it means when it says settlers out, without which we can't have a state of Palestine? You have to hold their feet to the fire publicly. To which the answer is, what, you think that's going to make any difference? It won't change a single view, to which I say this is completely wrong. Because I know, or I think, that although there are true anti-Semites behind BDS, behind the animus against Israel, in Britain, all I can talk about is Britain, the vast majority of people who subscribe to this terrible business of anti-Israelism just don't know. They don't know anything. They really, really, really believe that the indigenous people of Israel were the Palestinian Muslims who were there since time immemorial, and that the Jews only came to Israel because, as a result of Holocaust guilt, European Jews were plucked out of Europe after the Holocaust and planted in Palestine, a country to which they had absolutely no connection at all, from which they drove out the indigenous population, been there since time immemorial, and where they are continuing to try to drive out the remnant. That's what decent people in Britain believe. Why do they believe that? Because they're told it day in, day out, in universities, on the BBC, in media, everywhere. And the problem is, there is nobody telling them the opposite. The Jewish community is silent. the Jewish community is silent. The Jewish community is silent on this. Okay, so if I was saying this in Britain, they would say, I stood up and said this, oh, hello. I mean, when I say it's silent, what I mean is there's no institutionalized mechanism for putting into the public domain the truth. And Israel is silent. And I think if these truths and other truths, Israel always behaves in accordance with law, it always has done, it has law on its side, it has law on its side in its inception, it has law on its side in the territories, it has law on its side in the wretched occupation, which is not an occupation under law. Israel doesn't ever say this. Nobody knows it. So if I were a British person, a decent, upstanding British person, and I knew nothing about the Middle East, I knew nothing about the Jewish people, nothing about Jewish history, and I was told day in, day out, this mythology, I would also be pretty cheesed off with the Israelis. I would also be predisposed to think that what they're doing is terrible. I would believe that, they're acting against law. They're acting against justice, because I'm a British person. I believe in law, and I believe in justice, and I believe in helping people who are vulnerable, because I'm British, I'm decent. Those people could be turned overnight by the right kind of campaign, so at least they would say, what did they say? Where did that come from? What are they talking about? And then at the very least, there would be a row. And then at the very least, people would say, oh, but I've never heard that argument before. Is it true? And then Pandora's box would be open, and out would come truth tellers. But that's not what's happening. And so that's the way you deal with BDS. You have to reframe the entire strategy. Stop defending Israel. Stop defending. Stop saying, why are you shouting at us? We're the victims here. Oh, we don't slaughter Palestinian children. We treat them alongside our children in Israeli hospitals. Everyone's going, you shouldn't be there anyway. As soon as you defend yourself on territory that they are defining for you, you've lost. Don't defend, attack. These people have to be taken down. The people who are telling lies have to be taken down, and we collectively have to be proactive and telling people truths, and telling people truths about the lies they are being told. We shouldn't be waiting to be told we're dreadful and then defending ourselves, then we've lost. We should be saying, we are telling you, you are dreadful, because you are believing this rubbish, you are putting out this rubbish, you are being duped, you are being told lies. That's what we should be doing. That is the way you deal with BDS.